It's interesting to see how far Sony has come as a video game company. PlayStation 1's debut in 1995, Sony has been one of the most successful video game companies and has given us great games and new features for years. PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, and PlayStation 4 were all consoles that were extremely successful and sold over 100 million units each. Though I want to talk about the PS3 today. When it first released, it was a laughingstock of a console, so let's find out why. Let's take it back to 2005. On November 22nd, 2005, the Xbox 360 was released and it was a major success. It was an affordable console just at $300 and it offered so much such as cross game chat and online subscription that really incentivized people to play with their friends, great exclusives such as Halo 3, Gears of War 3, Fable 2, Crackdown, and Forza Horizon. Microsoft already had a year-long lead ahead of Sony, but Ken Kutaragi was praising the PlayStation 3 and it hadn't even been released yet. He was downplaying Microsoft's success and just basically saying that PlayStation was an overall better system than the Xbox 360 and Microsoft just got lucky. PlayStation 3 was then released on November 11, 2006 in Japan and November 16, 2006 in North America. People's thoughts off the bat weren't that good. The console was $600 on launch for the 60GB Wi-Fi version and $500 for the 20GB version without Wi-Fi. Fans were in shock as PlayStation was always known for selling their consoles at a relatively low price. The console's high price was due to the complicated cell processor. It was extremely difficult and expensive to manufacture, and it didn't help when fans realized it had no cross-game chat, lack of games on release, and really did nothing the 360 was offering. When fans realized it wasn't a consumer-friendly product, it led many people to getting an Xbox 360. It didn't help that the PlayStation 3's infrastructure was so complicated with the cell processor that game developers gave up on working with the cell processor, and then instead led them to focus on the Xbox 360 version of a game and they would just port it over to PS3, which led to games playing better on the Xbox 360. It doesn't also help that Sony was losing money on each console they sold. This was due to the materials and manufacturing costs for the console, which weren't cheap. Sony had lost focus of what fans and game developers wanted, and they were in the shadow of the Xbox 360 for a little while, but Sony didn't give up and they were ready to start fixing the PlayStation 3. Sony needed to win the trust of the gaming community again and do a complete 180 on the PlayStation 3. It started with creating games that would make people want to get a PlayStation 3. Great exclusives were released such as Killzone 2, Final Fantasy 13, Little Big Planet, Uncharted 2, Metal Gear Solid 4, Infamous, Demon's Souls, and Gran Turismo 5. In 2007, Sony settled their lawsuit with the immersion over the Rumble feature, and it was being added back to PlayStation 3 controllers, which now has Rumble and its full motion feature from the 6-axis. Prices start to drop and design changes were made as well. The original Fat PS3 had 4 USB ports and 2 of them got removed in September 2008. PS3 60GB models were now being sold for $400 and the new 40GB mode for the same price. In 2009, the last price drop was made to $300 for the 120GB new slim design. Sony also started offering more support to game developers to learn the PS3's infrastructure, which led to many developers becoming more comfortable with creating games on the PlayStation 3. It was also around this time where Sony would start experimenting with PlayStation Move, which was more of like a cool little gimmick for Sony if people wanted to turn their PlayStation 3 into a Wii basically. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really like the Kinect or the PlayStation Move. It just didn't really have that many good games. I'll give it credit though, it was a neat little experiment that didn't really ruin the reputation of the company at the E3 reveal. I wonder if another company would ruin their reputation doing that. Other than that, it was a pretty good year for Sony. The logo of the PlayStation 3 was also changed, and the massive marketing campaign for the PS3 was going great. Sony was slowly gaining momentum again after these changes through 2007 to 2009. The console was now affordable again and offered great exclusives for fans to play. In 2010, new exclusives were being pumped out. You had God of War 3, Heavy Rain, MAG, Yakuza 3, and 3D Dot Game Heroes. Nothing much else happened that year. It was a pretty steady year for Sony with some great exclusive releases. However, on April 17, 2011, there was an external intrusion on the PlayStation Network, which led to 77 million accounts getting their personal information compromised, mainly credit card information. Sony shut down the servers on April 20, 2011, and as well for the next 23 days to look into the issue and fix it. During 2011, this is one of the biggest data breaches, and Sony was in shame for what happened. The breaching incident cost Sony $171 million to fix. On top of that, Sony received many lawsuits after the breaching. On April 27, 2011, Christopher Jones filed a lawsuit against Sony for failure to encrypt data and establish adequate firewalls to handle a server intrusion contingency. There was also a Canadian lawsuit against Sony for up to $1 billion in Canadian dollars, which is about $778 million in US dollars. The breach-in didn't give Sony the best image, as it made it look like Sony had terrible security for their servers. Once the servers were back up, Sony gave all users 1 free month of PSN Plus and some free selected content. This was the point where Sony was getting much closer in closing the gap with the 360 sales. The Xbox 360 was sitting around 73.2 million units sold, and the PS3 was sitting at 70 million units sold. This was another great year for Sony, as they had massive releases such as The Last of Us, the game that Sony fanboys worship on Twitter. I just can't open Twitter without seeing somebody just comparing The Last of Us to anything. It's just insane. It's just, oh my gosh. Journey, Hitman Absolution, Darksiders 2, Spec Ops The Line, Resident Evil 6, and GTA 5 were also released around this time. And in early 2013, the PS3 surpassed the Xbox 360 in sales. It's sitting at 87.4 million sold right now, and the 360 is sitting at 84 million sold. At the end of the day, Sony learned that just because your first two consoles had major success didn't mean you could develop this new ego and start acting like your system is better than everything in the universe. And not charge the price of your newly made console for the same price as a freezer from Lowe's, which has barely any games on launch or functionality compared to their competitors. Sony throughout the years improved the PlayStation 3 and caught up to the Xbox 360, and not only that, surpassed it. Even though that doesn't really matter, they just pretty much got back on their feet. From then on, Sony would go on to create the PlayStation 4 and then the PlayStation 5, which are really two good consoles with great exclusive games. Microsoft also made the Xbox Series S and X, which has Game Pass, which I love. Amazing feature. Oh yeah, I also forgot they made the Xbox One. It has Connect.
The experience. TV and movies, TV. Xbox, watch TV. TV. TV, watch TV, TV and TV remote.